Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today we are taking a look at this knife from Ruike. This is the P865B. I do wish they would start naming these because it's really hard to remember these numbers, and I hope I won't mess this up. There are a couple of other Ruike models for this year, and I sometimes put one number in for the other, so I'll try really hard not to do that. Anyway, I do want to say thank you to Ruike Knives Canada for sending this along for review. This is a really cool knife, and I have been thoroughly enjoying this, carrying it, using it. It's just really, really nice. I have to say this. I do find this year the offerings from Ruike have been, a step above what they've been in previous years. Their quality was always pretty good and their designs were always pretty good, but the designs for this year, especially this knife and the P848, I believe, are really, really cool looking knives. So let's go ahead and get into the specs on this one. I'll tell you what I like, what I dislike. And I will say, if you want to pick one of these up for yourself, check the link in the description box to Ruike Knives Canada. Whether you're in Canada or the US, you can order from there. And just so those of you who are watching from the US know, with the border challenges here, it's not knives going out that are a problem at all. It's just stuff coming in. So there's no risk to order literally anything from Canada and having it shipped to the US. Anyway, let's get back to our discussion and start off with size and weight the way that we normally do. This knife is 8 inches overall, so fairly full-size folding knife. 3 9/16 on that blade, and 4.5 inches on the handle. Now, this is a very slim knife. It's around 1/2 inch thick, but as you can see, there's very little in terms of the width this way. And the weight on this, and this is pretty impressive considering the way this is built, but 2.48 ounces. 2.48 ounces, very slim, very lightweight, carries nice and deep in pocket. So this is a really, really unobtrusive knife. And that is probably one of my favorite things about it. It is so nice to carry this. It's so comfortable. Often if I'm, you could carry this going for a run, or, if you're wearing workout pants or even pajama pants around the house, you can carry this knife. It works really, really well. So this is a real win because you get a full-size knife in an extremely lightweight package. And I've got to say, I really do appreciate that aspect of this knife. Something else I really appreciate is the blade here. This is a Wharncliffe design. Now, there is one issue that I have with this knife. Sorry, let me get my hand in here so the camera will focus right. And that is the bead blast. I really, really like the blade shape. It's nice and thin behind the edge. It's not super thick blade stock. Wharncliffe's designed blades are quite useful in my opinion, and I get a lot of good use out of them. And this one even slices really, really well because of the overall thin grind and thin blade stock in general. But I do wish it weren't bead blasted. I'm just not a fan of bead blasting. I find it just makes knives look a little bit cheaper and a little bit less cool than they would otherwise. A stone wash or a satin finish would definitely be preferable on this knife. In terms of performance though, it's very good. For steel, we have 14C28N, which is a very, very nice budget steel. In fact, it is by far my favorite budget steel, and it will even outperform some of the mid-range steels like the VG10s or 154CM. 14C28N is going to be very comparable to those, but coming in at a discounted price point. Now, I will say it probably costs a little more than, say, HCR 13 MOV or 440C or some of those. You generally find it in knives that are like in the $30 to $50 range rather than the $20 to $30 range. So that's my overall take on the steel. Great choice on the steel, great blade shape. In terms of the performance here, it's really, really nice. The only complaint I have is the bead blasted finish, which is not, it doesn't just ruin the knife for me or make me hate it or something like that. It's just not what I would have picked. All right, moving on to lockup and deployment. This is a thumb stud knife with a liner lock, and it deploys pretty comfortably. Now, it is going to be righty only. If you are a lefty, it just won't fit. You can see there's the hole in the blade for that thumb stud, and there's not enough room on this side to accommodate. So it is really right hand deployment only, and it carries that way anyway. So Sorry, lefties, but this one is not going to be for you. The liner lock is comfortable. It's easy to actuate, and the action is pretty nice. The detent is about where you want it to be able to flick this open, and you can, if you want to, open it slowly as well. So to me, that's a pretty well-balanced detent. It doesn't leave you, without options. You can really kind of do whatever you want. As I said, the lock bar is comfortable. It's not super thick, and I wouldn't really call this like a heavy-duty kind of hard-use knife, but it's definitely adequate for anything that an EDC knife would want to do or need to do. Let's see, is there anything else? Oh yeah, I should talk about the washers. What they've got in here, let's see if I can show you. Maybe it's not going to show up. Hold on. You can kind of see there. It's hard to see here on the camera, but there's phosphor bronze against the blade and then Teflon against the handle. And if you're going to do those two layered like that, I prefer it that way. I don't know, I guess you could take this apart and try to switch them if you really wanted to do that. But to me, it seems pretty good as it stands. So I don't think there's much need to mess with this particular action. And for a knife that's on washers, it's pretty good. You can see that with a little bit of shaking, if I'm taking the lock bar tension off, it will actually drop shut. So pretty well done. The other interesting thing about this knife is it's very, very close. If you had extended this up just a little bit, this could actually be a fairly effective front flipper, I think. And that would have been a cool option to see. And of course, we'll talk about that. We've talked about that before with the other rake that I really, really like for this year, which is the P848. This knife, again, if you just extended the blade up a little bit, you could make this into a pretty neat front flipper. You could also, it'd be easier because the tang is right there. You could easily make this into a normal style of flipper. Anyway, trying to stay on task here. Lockup and deployment is good. There's no blade play side to side. It's Torx construction. So T6 here, you can adjust that. And for a lightweight knife like this, it wouldn't work for me because I just can't stand blade play at all, even a little bit. But for some of you, you may say, well, I'd like a little lighter action on this. I'd like the friction to be less in the pivot there. So you could loosen this up and introduce a teeny bit of blade play. I've got it tightened down to where I like it, but you could loosen this up and introduce a little bit of blade play and then have a knife that probably flicks open even easier than it does at this point, but it still works fine, as you can see. So that's my take on lockup and deployment. Let's move on to the handle construction here. So handle construction, again, is something I'm pretty impressed with. We've got contour G10, full G10 backspacer that goes all the way around the corner and ends here. Internally, we have nested liners, and you can see there's the screws that hold the back of the knife apart. They're not accessible. If you were going to try to take this knife down, you'd have to take the G10 layers off, and then you'd be able to get at the screws that actually hold the stainless steel liners together. Okay, so it'd be a bit more of a process taking this apart than your average folder where you'd be able to see those screws showing here on the other side. And that was the same, if you may recall, as the P848. I talked about that in the construction of that video, or the construction of that knife. One other thing I should point out, and I think you should be able to see it. Hold on. Maybe it's not going to work. Maybe I can show you with a flashlight. Give me 1 second. There you go. You can see that this is milled out internally to save some weight, and that was worth doing because they got this knife all the way down to that 2.4 ounce weight, which is really, really spectacular. So in terms of construction, I really like the way that they've done this. If you were going to make this a little heavier duty, you could increase the thickness of the lock bar here and increase the lock bar tension. As it is, it's fairly soft lock bar tension, which makes the knife really easy to actuate. but isn't what I would call super confidence inspiring. The ergos are good. I have no complaints about the ergos for the kind of task I think this knife is designed for. You know, it's a little smaller in hand, and if you really grip it, you don't get any hot spots, but you can kind of feel like if I was really trying to bear down on this, so you see I can get a little bit of movement. Something with a larger handle that allows me to really lock in would be more appropriate for sort of a hard use type of task. I will say the texturing they've got on the G10 here, where some of the fibers are exposed, is very grippy, and so I really, really like that. But there also isn't much in terms of, you know, anything keeping your fingers off the blade here, and no jimping of any kind on the back spine. So again, you know, this, and now let me say, I don't feel like this is a knife that's designed for, you know, heavy duty kind of hard use cutting tasks out in the bush, or skinning animals, or filleting fish or something. This is a light duty EDC knife, and as in that role, I think these scales and this ergonomic work really, really well. If you want something that you're going to really pound on or really have to grip into, something with a larger handle that allows a little more contact with the hand and is a little more hand filling is probably where you'd want to go. Now, since we're already kind of showing a couple of knives here, let's start with some comparisons. First up is going to be the Para 2, which is primarily here because everyone is very familiar with the Para 2. You know, here we have a knife. One of the things I will say is, look how much cutting edge you're getting and how much knife overall you're getting in a knife that weighs less, like quite a bit less than the Para 2. And that's pretty darn impressive, because the Para 2 is impressive in itself. Kaiser Tangram would be similar. Blade steel, of course, is not going to be as good on the Tangram as the 14C28N. The price, though, is going to be a little bit lower. What else have we got? Here is the Bestech Paladin, another knife made overseas that you may find interesting. And I will say, I love the design of this knife. I think Bestech has got a real winner here. Up to this point, this is bar none my favorite of the budget-friendly Bestechs, no question about it. In fact, I would even go a step further. This is going to be my favorite Bestech design in general. What else have we got here? Manly Peak is another, you know, lightweight knife. If you want something that's maybe a little more substantial in hand, this may be a good option for you. Very slim, very lightweight. Again, here is the other rake that I really like for this here. This is the Ruike P868. See, I want to call them the opposite every time. And honestly, guys, I think these two designs from Ruike knives this year are the standouts. These two are totally, totally impressive. I love the look. I love the design. I love the functionality on both of these knives. What else have we got? Oh, this one is kind of comparable because of the fact that it's pretty lightweight. And again, fairly light duty. This is the Buck 110 lightweight. Obviously, it has no clip, which is a little problematic for some of us, but it does come with a belt pouch if that's the kind of if that's what you're looking for in terms of how you carry a knife. And I guess we should also bring in here the Rat Model 1. When you talk about, you know, budget liner lock knives, you pretty much have to at least bring the Rat Model 1 in for a minute or two. Obviously, going to be much more heavy duty than what we have here with the Ruike. Okay. So those are the comparisons I've got for you. What is my overall take on this knife? Well, guys, I'm a fan for sure. I love this design. I think it looks really, really sleek, really, really cool. It's also incredibly lightweight. The blade steel is great. The blade shape is great. There's just not much to dislike about this knife. The only potential issue, and really it's not much of an issue at all, is one, it's a little small in hand, and two, it can be just a little tough to get your thumb firmly on that thumb stud, but not even a problem. Okay, so there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think of this design. I have to say that, you know, between this and the P848, I think those are the two nicest designs I've seen to date from Ruike knives. There you go, guys. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will talk to you soon.